I'd like to welcome everybody to the information session on achieving the CPA designation. My name is Michael Levy. I'm a co-director of the PASS program. Later on, you'll be hearing from my partner, Ira Walfish, who is the other co-director of PASS. Let me begin by explaining what I'd like to cover over the course of this session. We're going to start off with the session purpose, where we'll go over our objectives for this session. And then we'll start with part one. During part one, we're going to focus on the current CPA program. So we'll start with a bird's eye description of the overall program, and then we'll delve a little bit more deeply into some of the components of the program, including Capstone 1, Capstone 2, and the CP. Then we'll take a look at a decision tree where we'll take a look at a couple of different paths you can take to getting your CPA designation under the current regime, and we'll talk about which path to take. We'll also take a look at the blueprints for the module exams that many of you will be writing should you participate in the current program. And then finally, we'll talk about the timing of the module exams and deciding when to write. In part two of the presentation, we'll take a look at the new certification program. We'll talk about transitioning from the old to the new program for those who are kind of caught in between where they've started the old program and the new program begins. We'll talk about that. We'll give you a general description of the new certification program. Although it's to some degree a work in process, there is a fair amount of detail that's out there at this point, and we'll share with you what we can. And then finally, some of you will be in a position where you really have a choice of pursuing the current program or the new program. And we'll try to give you the best advice we can on which path to take. There are obviously pros and cons for both. And then finally, in part three of the presentation, which will be very short, we'll just tell you a little bit about ourselves, who is PASS, and we'll talk about what PASS has to offer. So let's get started now with the session purpose. The purpose of the session is to acquaint you with the exams that you're going to be writing to achieve your CPA designation and discuss what's involved in preparing for these exams. With that knowledge, you should be able to make an informed decision as to how and when to attack the exams. We'll also acquaint you with a PASS program that's been designed to help you complete the program, and I'm hoping that with good knowledge of what the exams involve and how to prepare, hopefully whatever tension you're feeling will at least be relieved somewhat. I know that for many people, the greatest tension is when there's tons of uncertainty and you don't know what you're up against. Hopefully by the end of this session, I'll at least have some idea of what lies ahead, which hopefully should relieve some tension for many people. So let's get started now with the current CPA program. So I'm going to start by giving you a bird's eye view of the program. If you look at the program at a high level, it's really outlined quite nicely on this one slide here. Basically, once you come into the program, assuming you do the PEP modules, and we'll talk later on about the other alternative, but assuming you do the PEP modules, you would start with Core 1 and Core 2. Core 1 focuses primarily on financial accounting. Core 2 focuses primarily on management accounting. So you would attend modules for each of these exams, Core 1 and Core 2. Modules are usually around 8 weeks or so. And you would write an exam at the end of each module, the Core 1 exam focusing primarily on financial accounting, and Core 2 focusing primarily on management accounting. You'll get more detail on exactly what's tested later in this presentation. Once you get through Core 1 and Core 2, you would then write 2 elective exams. You would choose from among 4 electives: assurance, performance management, tax, and finance. As long as you're not interested in your public accountant's license, you can choose whichever of the 4 you wish. If you want to get your public accountant's license without having to write an additional exam post-CP, you'll have to choose specifically the assurance elective and the tax elective. Once you get through elective 1 and elective 2, you would then move on to the capstones. Capstone 1 is going to focus on a big business case that you'll work on as part of a group, and we'll talk in a little bit more detail about this in just a few minutes. Capstone 2, you'll be writing practice cases based on past CFE cases to help you prepare for the CFE. and then you'll finally move on to the CPA itself. Now, the education program normally takes 2 years from start to finish. The modules have to be taken in order, Core 1, Core 2, and then the electives. The program can, however, be completed in 1 year, particularly if students take Core 1 and Core 2 simultaneously. In order to do that, you would need a higher GPA than normal. You would need a 75% in core prerequisite courses, an average of 75%, which is higher than what you would normally need, as you'll see later on. Electives can also be taken simultaneously, so that's one way to fast track through the program. You can also get through the program more quickly, even taking one at a time, as long as you take one exam every quarter and pass your first time. The CPA PEP, including the CFE, has to be completed within 6 years from the initial start date, but that's obviously not a big issue now because the last CFE will be in 2028. So at the end of the day, you'd have to be done by 2028 in any case. So the 6 year limit today is not really relevant. In some universities, it's possible to do an accredited program in place of either all the modules or certain modules. In some cases, they may also replace the capstones. We'll talk about this a little bit later in more detail. Precisely which modules you're exempt from would depend on the university, and even within the university, the particular program you took. The final step that everybody has to do, regardless of what path you take, is write the CP. That CP is something that everybody would write, and we'll take a look just in a few minutes at the various components of the CP. So let's take a look now at the capstones that you would do after finishing the modules. The main focus of the first capstone, capstone 1, is working on a business case as part of a group. Capstone 1 also prepares candidates for day 1 of the CP, because day 1 on the CP will draw on both the contents and the skills developed in capstone 1. Basically, day 1 of the CP, you're going to be working with the same fictional company that came up in the big case you worked on as part of a group in capstone 1. The only thing is that this company is now facing new operational and strategic challenges a few years down the road. So it definitely draws on some of the knowledge and information you would have obtained from having participated in capstone 1. Key aspects of capstone 1 include a significant written report that's intended to simulate a report that one would write to a board of directors or a team of senior executives. You would also, as a group, do an oral team presentation that, again, is meant to simulate a presentation to a board or team of senior executives. So both the written report and the oral team presentation is done as part of a group. And then there's structured time for questions and answers that are intended to simulate a question period from a high level, such as a board or team of senior executives. Again, no individual would be questioned. You would be questioned as a group. Capstone 1 starts with a 2-day weekend workshop, which provides an opportunity for team members to meet each other, develop team agreements, practice presentation skills, and develop an action plan for completing the learning activities required during the module. There is a significant time commitment for doing capstone 1, but when I speak to students, most of them will say it wasn't terribly difficult, but unfortunately it was quite time consuming. A good 10 to 15 hours are required per week. You can do this while you're working, of course, but it is a serious time commitment. And at the end, as we said before, you would submit the report and make the presentation. Because it's not terribly difficult, the pass rate is not disclosed, but we know that it's very high. Okay. At the end of the day, you can fail as a group, but I've rarely met anybody who failed simply because as you go along, they're going to ask you to make adjustments, modifications to your report. And as long as you do what they tell you to do, there's absolutely no reason to fail. This is not designed to weed people out. The weeding out takes place primarily during the modules. It's also possible for an individual to fail if the group feels that that individual is not pulling their weight. But again, failures for capstone 1, in my opinion, very rare. Hardly ever met anybody. Capstone 2 has 3 primary objectives: to continue the development of the candidate's enabling competencies of soft case writing skills, for example, particularly communication and self-management competencies. And its primary objective is to help prepare candidates for the 3 days of the CP. So this module is there completely to help you, okay? And you'll see why in just a moment. It also should help to continue the development of candidates' integration of technical competency areas. As long as you're going to be submitting numerous cases as part of this module, and as long as you submit the cases, you will pass. It doesn't matter whether you do well or you do poorly on the cases, you will pass Capstone 2. Capstone 2 starts with a 2-day weekend workshop. Before that, there's a good chance you'll have to write a day 3 case. You'll understand what I mean by a day 3 case by the time I finish the next slide or two. The workshop will teach students how to debrief a case and analyze a response. Over the course of about 7 weeks, you're going to need about 10 to 15 structured hours a week. Some weeks will require more time than others, as you'll be submitting more cases in some weeks than others. And the whole point of Capstone 2 is to write practice cases, have them professionally marked, and then they're debriefed in online webinars. So at the end of the day, point 2, which says prepare candidates for 3 days of the CP, this is wonderful preparation for the CP because it's there to give you an opportunity to write past cases. You're writing past CP cases as practice cases and submitting them. So by writing these cases, submitting them, and getting them professionally marked and getting professional feedback, that certainly will help you a great deal in preparing for the CP. So this is the one module that's there only to help you. The CP itself, as many of you may be aware, is 3 days long. The first day is day 1. You've got a 4-hour case, as you mentioned earlier. It's based on Capstone 1. You're dealing with the same fictional company, just a few years down the road, dealing with new challenges. And it's intended to be a less technical day than the other 2 days. It's testing your ability to deal with high level analysis, strategic issues, operational issues, etc. Day 2 and 3 tend to be the more technical days. Day 2 is a 5-hour case, so it's a bit of an endurance test, and it's referred to as the role case. The reason it's referred to as a role case is, as you'll see on the next slide, you actually choose a specific role on this case. I'll explain further very shortly. Day 3, you're writing what we call multis. I call them multis because they involve testing numerous competencies. And these cases tend to be shorter than day 1 and 2 because day 1 is one big 4-hour case. Day 2 is a 5-hour case. Day 3, you're going to be writing 3 cases that add up to 240 minutes. And any given case will be anywhere between 70 and 90 minutes. The CP covers the same 6 competencies that are covered in the core modules, which are audit and assurance, financial reporting, management accounting, finance, taxation, and strategy and governance. Now, you're required to achieve depth in 2 areas on the CP. So there are 2 competencies where you would have to have more depth than the other 4 competencies. And so for 2 competencies, you'd need to get depth, and for 4 of them, breadth would be sufficient. If you want to get your public accountant's license without writing additional exams, you would need to achieve depth specifically in assurance and financial reporting. So you would have to have a higher depth. You'd have to have a higher level of knowledge and a greater demonstration of ability in these 2 areas, assurance and financial reporting. Otherwise, you need to achieve depth in either financial reporting or management accounting, as well as any one of the following 4 competencies: assurance, taxation, performance management, or finance. So it's only the people who want a public accountant's license who would specifically have to get depth in financial reporting, and then within the other 4 competencies, the second depth area would have to be assurance. When it comes to the choice of assurance, taxation, performance management, or finance, that choice has to be made prior to the CP. So you'll be asked prior to the CP which of these depth areas to choose. The reason why you have to choose this prior to the CP is I mentioned earlier that day 2 we refer to as the role case. The reason why it's referred to as the role case is that on day 2 of the CP, you are going to choose a specific role: assurance, taxation, performance management, or finance. And the requirements you're going to have to deal with in the case will depend on the role that you chose. So, for example, the way the case is going to work is as follows. Typically, they will test financial reporting and management accounting, and everybody will have to deal with requireds dealing with these two competencies. But then the rest of the requireds will all vary depending on the role you chose. If I chose assurance, I will deal with financial reporting, management reporting, and all the rest of my requireds will entail dealing with insurance. If the person sitting next to me chose performance management, she will have to deal with financial reporting and management accounting just like me, the same requireds, but all the rest of her requireds will relate to performance management. So here the case is tailored depending on the role you've chosen. What I'd like to talk about now is paths to the CPA designation. Under the current system, there are two paths you can take. The most common path is to go through the PEP program, exactly the program we talked about earlier. I do my core modules, core 1 and core 2, then I do my elective modules, and I write my core exams, and I write my core exams at the end of each core module, my elective exams at the end of each elective, and then I move on to Capstone 1, Capstone 2, and then the CP. In order to participate in this path, you would need a 120 credit hour degree or equivalent and completion of specific subject area coverage, which is all delineated on the CPA Canada website. You would need a minimum grade requirement of 60% in each core course. And I've defined what core versus non-core is at the bottom of the slide. A minimum of 50% in each non-core course and a minimum average GPA of 65%. Remember, you may recall I said earlier that the fast track can take 2 modules at the time. You need 75%. Normally, it's 65%. I've defined core versus non-core. Core courses relate to each of the 6 competencies, except for intro courses. So even though financial reporting, for example, is one of the core competencies, if I bond my intro course, I don't have to worry about that. And again, the 6 core competencies are right here. So any of the courses relating to these 6 core competencies would be considered core courses. The non-core are general business courses like economics, statistics, law, IT. So this is one path that you can technically take. Another path is the accredited path. There is a path for students in CPA accredited programs that allows for some exemptions from CPA PEP prerequisites. There are numerous accredited programs across the country, and I've given you here a link, and if you go to that link, you can download a PDF that will give you a long list of all the different CPA accredited university programs, and it'll also tell you what it exempts you from. The bottom line is, depending on the accredited program you take, you may be, for example, exempted from Core 1, Core 2, as well as the elective modules. That's very, very common. If you take, for example, a master's program, you may be exempted from Capstone 1 also, and in some situations, perhaps even Capstone 2. What exactly you're exempted from depends not only on the university you attend, but the particular program in that university. This PDF will give you a list of universities, and you'll be able to see what am I exempt from depending on the university that I attend. Now, if you want further information on the pathways for becoming a CPA, I've given you the link you can go to in the CPA Canada website. There's a lot of information there. For the prerequisites for the diploma programs, or I should say really accredited programs, some are diploma, some could be master programs. For the prerequisites for these programs, that would depend on each university. So that's not dependent on CPA Canada. That's dependent on the university. Some programs may be more challenging to get into than others. You'd have to look at the specific university that you're considering entering. What I want to talk about now are the advantages of PEP over a diploma or accredited program. You have these two paths. Why would I want to do the CPA path versus the accredited path? So, I mean, personally, Ira and I are big fans of the CPA path, and I'll tell you why. And again, it's obviously your decision, but I'll just tell you why we like the CPA path. Number one, it saves you money. It's much less costly. Diploma or accredited programs are far more costly than simply taking PEP and then writing the exams. Bottom line, and then you can always take a prep course to help you get through it. Core 1 is the most expensive of the modules, and it's only $1,475. The other modules cost $1,400. So for example, if you want to just compare that, if I was to go to a diploma program, a non-master's program that exempts me from these four modules, just to give you an example, at TMU, it's around 9,600. At U of T, the diploma program is around 12,000. Master's programs, the master's program at U of T in accounting and finance, $30,000. Whereas to get through the modules, if you do the math, to get through core one, core two, and the electives is only 5,675. 1,400 times 3 plus 1,475. So you definitely save a fair amount of money. Number two, the time commitment. The diploma or accredited programs are generally full-time programs, and they may preclude working for a period of time while you're going through the program. The nice thing about PEP is it's designed so you can be doing it while you're working. So in addition to the accredited programs costing more money, there's also a huge opportunity cost because there's a period where you can't be working. Whereas if I do PEP, I can be working throughout the time I'm taking it. So I'm earning money. So that's a huge opportunity cost. That has an even bigger financial impact than the difference in cost between PEP and an accredited program. But quite frankly, it's not just about money. Writing the module exams is very good because it forces you to beef up on your technical. Problem we have found based on anecdotal evidence, so I don't want to lie to you, I haven't done a serious scientific analysis, but we do teach many, many students. And just the anecdotal evidence that we've derived just from speaking with students is that some students who attended accredited programs, whether they were diploma programs or master's programs, they felt that their technical wasn't always adequate for the CP because sometimes there was a gap. Like I remember one woman telling me, my program was pretty good, but management accounting was really bad. Otherwise, it was good. So sometimes, depending on the program you go to, there may be a gap in your technical knowledge. Whereas if you force yourself to write these exams, core one, core two, as well as the electives, you're forced to study all the technical that you're going to need in order to get through the CP. Also, there can sometimes be a large time gap between when you do the diploma or accredited program and the CP. For example, some of these diploma programs begin right after you graduate. So they'll begin in May and they'll take you to, let's say, September, but then you won't write the CP until the following September. So now I've really learned a lot of technical, but I have a lot of time to forget my technical, which is not so good. Some programs might end in January, but at the end of the day, there's likely to be, for many of the programs, a large gap between the completion of the program and the CP, leaving you a lot of time to forget your knowledge. If you go through PEP and you start right after you graduate, then you'll write your final elective in the March before the CP. There's going to be a much smaller gap, so hopefully you'll have a lot less time to forget your technical. Finally, and most importantly, the module exams are passable. Yes, if I go to an accredited program, most of them do exempt you from core one, core two, and the electives. That would be a fantastic bonus if these exams were super difficult. If these exams, my son's writing the CFA exams right now. If the module exams were like the CFA exams, I would tell everybody to do the accredited program because those are really, really, really hard exams. The module exams are really not terribly difficult. If you're well prepared, there's no reason you won't pass. It's not a walk through the park. It's not a walk in the park. I'm not going to lie to you. You have to study hard, and PASS is there to help you get through these. But the bottom line is they are passable. So is it worth the drawbacks I just mentioned in order to get out of the exams that are in any case passable? Let me just briefly now go over the blueprints for each of the four module exams. But before I do, are there any questions? Please don't hold back questions. I'm very happy to answer, and Ira is very happy to answer any questions you have. So please don't think, oh, I can't ask my question. It's too silly. Believe me, it isn't. Anybody? Okay. Let's go over the module exam blueprints. we'll start with Core 1 and Core 2. Okay. For Core 1 and Core 2, guys, it's primarily a multiple choice exam. You've got 75% of the exam. So that's 3 hours of the exam is objective format questions, which are basically multiple choice. And then the last 25% of the exam, the last hour, it's a 4-hour exam, 3 hours on multiple choice, and then 1 hour on a case. Now, as you can see in the final column, it's a 4-hour exam, but you're responsible for managing your time allocation between the objective format portion of the exam and the case portion. You are given the whole exam at the very start. If you're smart, you're going to be very careful to leave a full hour to write the case. But there's nothing to stop you from spending 3.5 hours on the multiple choice and only a half hour on the case. It would just be an extremely bad idea because you will need the full hour. So it's really up to you to allocate your time responsibly. Let's take a look now at the objective format portion of the exam. For Core 1, as you can see, and as I mentioned at the very beginning of the session, the biggest portion of it deals with financial accounting. As you can see, financial reporting, which is the same thing as financial accounting, comprises 50 to 70% of the objective format questions, of the 75 questions. The second biggest chunk is audit and assurance, which is not insignificant at 10 to 30%. Finance is not terribly significant at 5 to 10%. And then taxation is not insignificant, but it's less significant than audit and assurance. And I wouldn't overspend time on tax, given that there's a huge amount of information when it comes to tax, and it's obviously not a huge portion of the exam. Core 2, as you can see, is, as I mentioned earlier, focusing primarily on management accounting. So management accounting is 50 to 70%. The second biggest area is strategy and governance, which is 10 to 30%. Financial reporting is 0 to 10%. You literally may see no financial reporting on this exam, so that's certainly not its focus. And then finance is not insignificant. You can expect to see 15 to 20% of the exam as finance. So when you come into this exam, you'd want to make sure to be strong in management accounting, of course, but as well as strategy and governance and finance. That's the objective format portion of the exam, the multiple choice questions. When it comes to the case for Core 1, the case will assess competencies mainly in financial reporting, but they're going to integrate one or two other competency areas. So in all likelihood, they will integrate assurance, and then they can also integrate a third competency area. When it comes to Core 2, the cases will assess mainly management accounting, but they'll integrate one or two other competency areas. So extremely, extremely likely that they'll integrate strategy and governance. They might also, for example, throw in finance. Now, one of the things they're also testing are the enabling skills. The enabling skills I mentioned are more your soft case writing skills, the sort of skills that you don't study, but you develop through practice case writing. Now, I don't want to get into detail on the material that you have access to because there's more detail here that's important to you at this point. Basically, when you write your exam, you will have available in electronic form the CPA handbook, which covers both financial accounting as well as assurance. And you will make some use of that during the exam. And then you'll also have the Tax Act, which is unlikely you will use for any of the exams because most people do not understand the Tax Act. Most people cannot read the Tax Act. Now, let's talk very briefly about the electives. We'll start with the assurance elective. What they're allowed to do, quite frankly, is completely irrelevant. So I'm not going to deal with this box or this box, the first two boxes at the top, because it's irrelevant. What's important is what is in effect. So right now, we're dealing with a 4-hour exam, similar to Core 1 and Core 2. Of those 4 hours, let's take a look at what you would need to do. If you look at the box that I've bolded in the left-hand corner, you can expect to have 15 objective format questions, 15 multiple choice questions. So that will just make up a small part of the exam. And then you're going to have two cases for a total of 200 minutes. So the bulk of this 4-hour exam right? 4 hours is 240 minutes. The bulk of this exam is going to be the cases. Unlike the case of Core 1 and Core 2, where you're only writing one case, for this exam, you'll be writing two cases. And at the end of the day, the maximum time for any one case will not be greater than 120 minutes, and the minimum would be 80 minutes. So, for example, you may have one case that's 120 minutes, another that's 80, adds up to 200. But you're not going to have a case that's 130 minutes because it can't be more than 120, and you're not going to have a 70-minute case because it can't be less than 80. Altogether, the exam is 4 hours. Now, when it comes to those 15 multiple choice questions, obviously a good chunk of them are going to be assurance because this is the assurance elective, so 50 to 70%. And then there's not an insignificant portion that will be multiple choice that in accounting. So at least 20% will be accounting, and it could be as high as 40%. Now, when it comes to the cases, for the cases, they're going to assess competencies mainly in assurance. So a minimum of 50% of the competency assessments will be for assurance elective competencies, but they will integrate other competency areas too. And once again, the enabling skills, the soft case writing skills are going to be important. When it comes to the taxation elective, you've got the same 15 objective format. Once again, you've got 15 multiple choice questions. Once again, you've got two cases adding up to 200 minutes, with no case being longer than 120 or shorter than 80. This is true for all of the electives, so maybe I won't repeat it for the next two. When it comes to taxation, unlike assurance, in assurance, some of the multiple choice questions were assurance, some were financial accounting. When it comes to taxation, 100% of the multiple choice questions will be in tax. And then when it comes to the cases, they will assess competencies mainly in taxation. So at least 50% will be taxation, but they could easily throw in and will throw in one or two other competency areas. So for example, perhaps you'll be dealing with a business valuation and dealing with finance. They can throw in other competencies besides tax. If you choose the finance elective, once again, you've got the same format. I'm not going to keep repeating it, the exact same format. The multiple choice questions, the objective format is multiple choice, will be 100% finance. So similar to tax, just one competency will be tested. And then when it comes to the case, at least a minimum of 50% of it will be finance, but they will combine it with other areas. So they could throw in tax, they could throw in management accounting. They can certainly throw in one or two other competencies. And then the last of the electives I'll go over is performance management. There, once again, you've got the same format as the other electives. And here, they can actually throw in to the 15 multiple choice questions more than one competency. As you can see, performance management is really the composite of management accounting and strategy and governance. That's why it's no surprise that when it comes to the multiple choice, notice they've got significant testing of both these areas. Management accounting, 40 to 60%, strategy and governance, 30 to 50%. So for this elective, it's going to be very important that you be very strong in both management accounting and strategy and governance. You'll need both. The cases will assess competencies mainly in strategy and governance and management accounting, but once again, they could integrate one or two other competency areas. So maybe they'll throw in finance, for example. Any questions on the blueprints? I went through them fairly quickly. If you're interested, by all means, spend more time on them on your own. But any questions on the blueprints? Okay, the last thing I'd like to talk about before we move on to Ira, who will go over the new certification program, let's just talk a little bit about the timing of the modules. I gave you the timing of Core 1 and Core 2 here. I gave you the start time for the module as well as the exam. And the bottom line is I started with winter of 2026 in case anybody's graduating. I don't know if we have anybody here who's graduating at the end of the fall. That's why I threw that in. For most of you who are in fourth year, the first module you could consider taking would be in the spring of 2026. because it begins on May 2nd. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the session, some people will take 2 years to get through this, and that's fine. If you start in May and you take 2 years, you can still get to the CP because there will be a CP up until 2028. Others like to do it in 1 year. If you want to complete the whole program in 1 year and get to the CP by September 2027, you've got two ways you can do this. One is just taking one module at a time. And if you start in May, what you could do if you wanted is do your first module, the core 1 module in May, then do the core 2 module in July. And then you could move on to the elective modules, and the elective modules are offered 4 times a year. So what you could do then is do your first elective starting in July, and you could do your first elective, starting in October, and then finally you can do your final elective in December. So in theory, just to recap, you could do core 1 starting in May, core 2 starting in July. Then you could do your first elective beginning in October. And then, although I don't show it here, you could do your final elective in December of 2026. You would then finish your electives by March 2027 and go on to the CP. Alternatively, let's say you want to take the summer off and you don't want to start the program May 2nd. You want to wait until July 25th to write core 1. If you wait until July 25th to write core 1, then you can't get through all the modules in time to write the CP in 2027. Because to write the CP in 2027, you'd have to take your final module in December and finish your final module exam in March of 2027. If I'm only taking one module at a time, that is not going to be possible if I only start July 25th. So if I start July 25th, yet I still want to write in 2027, the only way to do that is to take modules simultaneously. I mentioned earlier on in the session that you can take core 1 and core 2 simultaneously. So in theory, you could start July 25th and do both core 1 and core 2 at the same time. You can also do electives at the same time. However, if you do the electives at the same time, you have to be careful about the exam dates. Because notice, guys, that both the finance and tax exams are on the same dates. And both the assurance and PM exams are on the same dates. So if I want to take my elective modules at the same time, it's not going to be a problem if I take, say, finance and PM, because let's say I want to do both finance and PM starting in January of 2026. Or actually, let's be more realistic. Let's say I want to do both my finance and my PM starting in, let's say, October of 2026. The bottom line is that's not going to be a problem because my finance exam will be on December 16th and my PM exam will be on December 17th. So there's not a problem. But let's say I want to take finance and taxation at the same time. That's not going to work because I can't write both exams on December 16th. I can only write one exam on a given day. The reason why they set it up this way is many people who do finance also do PM. And many, many people who do assurance also do taxation, simply because assurance and taxation go hand in hand if you want to get your public accountant's license. Now, if you want to take two of the electives at the same time, or you want to take core 1 and core 2 at the same time, couple of caveats. Number one, you need a fairly good grade point average. It doesn't have to be stellar, but it's got to be at least 75% for the core courses, as opposed to, we saw earlier, only 60% otherwise. And then the other big issue is it's a huge time commitment, because you could be spending literally 15 hours or even 20 hours on each of the modules. So the idea of taking them simultaneously, unless you're an absolute workaholic and you're able to go without sleep, it generally only works if you're not working. If you're working, for most people, it's very difficult, if not almost impossible, to take two modules at the same time. As I said, unless you have the capacity to go without sleep and do a full-time job and then put in 30 hours or more study. So it's not for most people. This is meant, I think, primarily for people who are not working. So for example, there are students who will take the summer off, and then what they'll do is in the summer, they might do both core one and core two, but they're not working. That would be doable. The last thing I want to point out is there are extended modules, which are the exact opposite of taking two modules at a time. The extended modules would be for people who have very little time on their hands. I have a job that's extremely busy, or I have a job and a baby to look after, and I just don't have a lot of time on my hands. So they have extended modules that are 16 weeks long. So for example, I would start core one in January, but I'd write the exam in June. So I'd have double the amount of time. So the bottom line is these extended modules are meant for people who have very, very limited time on their hands. Any questions, guys? I've given you links, guys, for both the Ontario PEP schedule, in case anybody's going to be doing PEP, in case anybody lives out west and will be doing PEP out west. I've also given you a link for the CPA Western School of Business. That would apply to anybody who lives in one of the Western provinces and is planning to do PEP there. Okay, this finishes the discussion of the current program. I'm now going to turn over the electronic floor to Ira, who will continue with the new certification program. I'm going to stop sharing, so Ira, you can now put up your PowerPoint and control it.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I just want to make sure people can see. Can people see the new certification program?
Yes.
That's clear. Okay, you can see it moving. Okay, so I think Michael asked this question before, but I wasn't sure if anyone really responded. I just want to get a feel for this. Are there some people here that know they're going to be going through the new certification program, or some people may be unsure? Just anybody here, or
Yeah, so I'm going to be graduating in 2028 December, so I'm pretty sure I will be going for the new program.
yeah, okay. Okay, I just wanted to get a sense of that. Okay, great. So, look, I'm just going to start an introductory comment. Is that they've released certain details. There's not that many at the moment. I'm going to be going through what we know at the moment. There's going to be more released in the new year. Okay, so I'm just telling you that, obviously, I'll tell you basically everything that they've released publicly, and there is going to be more. So, we know some. All right, so they're launching in January 2027. So I'm assuming there's people here that are graduating in the spring of 2026. A typical question would be, can I enter the current program? Can I still enter the current program if I graduate in the spring of 26? So the answer is yes. So it is kind of important to know, so when does the current system end? Like, when do I have no choice? When do I have to go into the new program? So the last offering of Core 1 begins in January of 2027, and Core 2 is July of 2027. So if you graduate, you don't have a problem if you graduate in spring of 2026. The electives, the last one, the final offering is January 28th, and the exam would be March of 28. So by March of 28, that's it. That's the final exam for the electives, and then the existing system will be gone. Okay, any questions? Does that Makes sense. Okay. Now, how many CFEs do we have left? Well, we have two this year. This year, I'm sorry, I mean June of 26. We have June and September of 26. But in 27 and 28, there will only be one. There's not going to be a May-June CFE in 27 or 28. So, if you start spring of 26, if some of you here, I'm sure are graduating in the spring of 26, you can still write the CFE. Either you'll end up writing the CFE in 27 or 28. Now, you guys know that there's 3 opportunities to write the CFE. So if you start in 27, hopefully you'll pass. If you don't pass in 27, September, you could then write in September 28, second time. If you ended up failing in September 28, you would have to transition into the new system. I'll talk afterwards about transition. That's unclear what you would have to do in the new system. I haven't even explained the new system yet, but I'm just saying it's unclear because there is no CFE after September 28. You can start 27. Now, if you write September 26, I don't know if there's anyone here is probably not, that's writing September 26, then you have your 3 attempts. If you fail 26 September, you can write in September 27 and then September 28. But once you start in 27, hopefully you'll pass first time, if not second time. But you would have to transition if you run out of times and you don't pass the CFE by September 28. Questions? Okay. Now, what about the modules? So let's back it up a little bit. What if I'm unsuccessful on the module exams? I don't make it to the CFE in time. So, they're going to support you in the current system. And it's going to be kind of what I was saying before. There could be a transition. If you're in the middle of taking the modules and you're unsuccessful and there is no more module left because the timing I just said a few minutes ago has run out, what are you going to do? You're kind of in the middle. You passed a few exams, you didn't pass all the other exams. What are you going to do? So they have a whole link here. Now, I think I want to put this in the chat. Oops, sorry. Can I copy this one sec? I'm going to go away from the slide mode because I want to copy this link. We didn't give.
I'll just copy it in for you because
you
it's
want to
easier.
copy?
You're in the presentation mode, so I'm just copying in the link.
That's right.
I've copied it.
Great. Okay, thank you. Michael's copying the link. Look, I'm not going to lie, it's a little confusing. They go through all the different possibilities. Like, what if I finish core 1 exam? What if I finish core 2 exam? Depending on the timing. What if I finished an elective exam? They go through all the different possibilities and they show you a whole little chart and they show you, okay, here is how you would transition into the new system, which again, I haven't really explained yet. But so the bottom line is there will be a whole transition if you're caught in the middle, which some people may be caught in the middle, and you want to move into the new system. Oops. Okay, so as I said before, the bottom line is that the new certification system, they're still working on it. They have not, obviously they probably know more than what they've disclosed. But we know a few things, and I'll explain in a second what we know. We know the exams are going to be national exams. It's not going to matter what province you're in. We also know the exams are going to be given around 3 times a year. Okay, we know that. There is a link that you can find out more information. You can go to that link and you can find out, what they're currently disclosing. As I said before, there's going to be more coming in January of 26. So now, what is the structure? What do we know about this new system? All right, outside of Quebec, I don't know why, but Quebec's a little different here. But outside of Quebec, there's going to be a first exam called a knowledge assessment exam. That is really for people that did not do accounting or business courses. So let's say I did a degree, I don't know, I have a BA in science, and I decide I want to transition, I want to be a CPA. So if I'm coming from a non-business, non-accounting background, I will have to take this knowledge assessment exam. So what is this exam? Okay, you don't have to take it if you majored in accounting. But if I didn't major in accounting, I have to take this exam, this knowledge assessment exam. It's basically going to go through, and it's really going to be a technical exam, just to make sure you know some of the basics of accounting. That's really what it's going to. That's really what it's going to include. So again, I don't know. A lot of people are not going to have to take that exam. Quebec is an exception. The whole province doesn't have to take that exam, but if you're coming from a different background, then you will have to take that exam. Now, under the new system, there's no CFE. Core 1, Core 2, all of that is gone. They're calling the components they call it a foundational exam, and then they have what they're really calling professional exams. So they have a core professional exam part 1, they have a leadership professional exam part 2, and then they have a professional readiness, which is a final thing which you take like at the end. And similar to the current program, there is going to be modules before the exam, a little shorter. By a little shorter, I mean the module might be 6 weeks instead of 8 weeks. A little shorter. So they're going to have multiple exams, but they're not going to have a big exam at the end like a CFE. Now, what are each of these exams? So again, the little that we know, the foundational exam is a 3-hour exam. It's going to be a combination of multiple choice and cases. This seems to be a big theme. There is definitely more multiple choice. I don't know if you like multiple choice or not, but there is definitely more multiple choice. You're going to see it on how many exams. So on this foundational exam, you combination of multiple choice and cases, and they've expanded the areas. They've expanded the areas. Michael, I think, went over. We have 6 competencies right now. We do not have ethical decision making. We have the second one. We have governance. We have finance. We have financial reporting, management decision making. Okay, we have all of that. Non-financial reporting. We don't really have that. That's kind of included with financial reporting. We do have strategy, risk management. Okay, fine, but notice they're breaking out organizational governance and strategy, risk management, and innovation. We don't have that breakdown now. We have strategy and governance. Tax, okay, we have that. And then they have value creation, which we definitely do not have now. So, I don't know, there's 9 topic areas. We're calling them topic areas. I don't think they're using the word competency. Maybe that'll change, but they're using the word topic areas. So these are the 9 topic areas that will be covered in the foundational exam. Everyone good? Next exam. They have a core professional exam, and that's in 2 parts. So part A, everybody writes. Okay. Part B, only if you're going for public accounting. Now, what's part A? So part A, 3 hours, again, multiple choice and cases. It's more confusing, I'll be honest. It is more confusing than the current system because the topic areas are changing from each exam. We don't really have that so much now. You know what I mean? We have 6 topic areas. Okay, so if I take finance, I get tested on finance. I guess it's also kind of similar to the way we have the electives. They're not testing everything. But this only tests 5 of the 9 topics. That's going to be part A. Assurance, big data, financial reporting, non-financial, and tax. Okay, and it's 3 hours. Everybody has to do this part. Part B, if you're going for public accounting, you got another 2 hours. Okay. And not surprisingly, the topics are going to be slightly higher weighting for assurance. Well, that kind of makes sense. I'm going for public accounting. Okay. But you know what? It's interesting. It's the same topics here as part A. You got financial reporting and non-financial reporting. Okay. So, and you got assurance. So it's going to be the same topics as part A, just a little higher weighting. So you'd be writing for 5 hours. You'd be writing 3 hours, and then you'd be writing another 2 hours, and that would be part B of the professional exam part one. Everyone good? Okay. Then you have part two. They call that CPA leadership. And this one sounds like it's more like day two of the current CFE. It's a 5 hour big case. Not surprisingly, you've got all 9 topics. Okay. Actually, I think you have 10 here. What did they add? Value creation, big data. I don't even know what they added here. I think they broke out. I think what they did here, don't ask me why, they broke out big data and data analytics. Not sure why. That one was mixed in before. So you'll notice, count the topics. We have 10 topics here, not 9. Okay. I don't know why they broke that one out. And this is a big case. Okay. So everyone does this. This is called part 2, whatever, CPA leadership. The last one, the best one, is they're not weeding anyone out. It's a 2 hour case at strategy and a 1 hour case on ethics. This is not intended to weed people out, and this is only after 24 months of experience. So this is the one people are not really going to worry about. Everyone's going to have to take this, and it sounds like I don't know 100% here, but it sounds like no one's going to fail this. Okay, they're calling it professional readiness, and I guess they want to give that to you after you've had your work experience, and they're calling that the professional final exam. So you can see, people, obviously it's very different. When you really step back and you kind of look at it, I was thinking, right now people have to write a CFE, and that's 3 days of exams. So from that perspective, it's not that different about like how many days. Again, it's a little different because, if you're going for public accounting, it's going to be a little different. But if you look at the total number of exams, it's not that different. But obviously the exams sound like they're going to be very different. Heavier emphasis on multiple choice for sure. Day one of the CFE, I don't really know exactly how that's going to be tested or if it's going to be tested. It's probably going to be picked up a little bit in some of those 9 topic areas or whatever. But it's a pretty different system from an exam standpoint. Any questions? We're good. All right. So look, if I was in your position, I had to be deciding this. Obviously, one of my first questions would be, is it harder? Is it easier? Where's my best shot? So you can see our second point here. It's very hard to answer that question. I mean, people understand, we have not seen any sample exams. Okay, like I can say to you, it's multiple choice. Is it hard? I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen any multiple choice questions. We've seen nothing. There's no sample questions out there. There's no sample cases. It might be better, like the third bullet point here, it might be better, stick with a current program, better the devil you know. I don't know. You may not want to be guinea pigs. I can tell you historically, it has not been great when they've changed systems. The current system we have now began in 2015. Okay, like the whole marking scheme changed in 2000, from 2014 to 2015. That was like a major change on the CFE. And I still remember that the very first year it came out in 2015, if I was a student now, I don't know if I'd be going back to 2015. There were differences. It took a year for, I don't know, for the process to kind of settle. So it is what it is. I can't tell you that happens all the time, but they're going to a new system, and it's a major change in the system. I don't know. Is it going to be easier? Is it going to be harder? I think that's impossible to answer now. Personally, I would rather stick with what has already been tested, like 10 times. Personally, if I had a choice. If you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. If you're into the new system, obviously ignore what I'm saying now. Okay, fine, you're into the new system. You don't really have a choice. But I'm talking now to the people that, potentially do have a choice. Well, should I start the new system in 27, or should I try and, do the old system? And, hopefully I'll get through the old system. So I don't know. Those are just some of my thoughts. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on this, any questions, comments. Okay. There also is, look at the last point on the slide. There also could be a delay. Like if you graduate in the spring of 26, you want to start the new system, you're going to be waiting until 27. So you're going to have a 6-month delay. It's the new system's not starting before that.
Yeah, and if I could just add, that's when the process begins. The first exam
Right.
under the new system, I
Okay,
believe,
right.
is not until September of 27. So we're talking. So even though you would start your module a few months before that, at the end of the day, it's a long wait.
Right. Yeah, like if you start in the spring now and you want to do the current system, you can start right away. Get into the module over the summer. Go write the exam in September. Michael showed you the dates before. So you don't have that wait. Now, I don't know, life situation. Maybe your life situation is good. You want a big delay. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe you want a year delay. But as Michael just said now, that first exam is literally going to be like, I don't know, 14 months after you graduate. So basically just keep that in mind. Like I say, it could work to some people's advantage, but also may not be so advantageous. Okay. So, Bill, before I start the past program, are there any questions like on the new system? Like I say, I've given you, pretty much the detail that we know and that they, disclosed so far. Like I say, there's going to be more coming in January. Any questions, comments, new system?
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
What are some of the typical weaknesses you see in candidates, and how can we go about fixing those from now on?
Look, if you really step back, as Michael said before, I'll use his expression, a bird's eye view, and you look at this exam, it's really two components. And you're asking me for weaknesses, pick one or both. Number one, technical. You have to know your, I look at it and I go, it's like 50-50. You got to know your technical. And then case writing, number two. So different people will have different weaknesses. You have some people that are strong and technical, they just haven't written enough cases, and they have problems applying the technical, but their technical is okay. Other people could be the opposite. Their case writing skills are pretty good, but you know what? They don't have enough to say because their technical is not very good. So if I had to really step back, those to me are the real weaknesses. So, you look at the new system and it is, again, a combination. What do you think the multiple choice is? That's not case writing, that's technical. And then they have cases. And that's what they seem to be doing even more. So I look at the current system really, again, as like a 50-50. You got to know your technical, but that's not enough. You have to know case writing. And vice versa is also not enough. If I only know case writing and my technical is weak, I'm going to have a hard time getting enough depth when I write my cases. That's what I would say. That's it. It's know your technical and keep practicing the cases.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Do you know what the main motivation for them was to create this new program and the changes to it?
I'm being recorded. That's the problem. Um, what the motivation is? It's very expensive to change an entire system. The way that they're doing this. Given we had a major change in 2015, we now have another major change, I don't know, 12 years down the road, 12 years later. Do I know what the major? I mean, I can tell you what they say. They want more people to enter the system. And for some reason, they believe this will attract more people. That I think, is a big part of it. They want more people from different backgrounds to enter into the system. Why will this attract more people? Honestly, I'm not sure. Like I say, I don't know if we even know enough to answer that question, but I think that really was one of the major reasons. And it's expensive to do this, but they have a lot of money. People pay dues. So that allows them let's just say that allows them the latitude to basically do this. I don't know. I think I can't speak for Michael. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the current system is working. People are passing and stuff like that. People take it seriously. People are going into the system. They feel, I think, that they want more people.
I'd like to now move on to part 3 of the presentation, where I'd like to speak very briefly about the PASS program. PASS began offering courses all the way back in 1989. When we started, there was no CPA. There was the predecessor exam called the UFI. And then when the CPA came into being in 2015, we started training for the CPA. So we've been training students for CPA-related exams, first the UFI, then the CPA, for many, many years. We have a tremendous amount of experience. PASS courses have historically been offered in PwC, KPMG, EY, and Deloitte, as well as numerous mid-sized firms. Right now, we're offering the national program at PwC. We're also doing a part of the program at EY. Our courses are offered across Canada, literally from coast to coast. When I'm Michael Levy, when I wrote my exam, I was a gold medalist, and that's why I thought I had a lot to share with students when it comes to education. Our instructors provide a tremendous amount of feedback to our students because a large part of our courses involve writing practice cases, and they're trained to give a tremendous amount of constructive feedback. And overall, we've had very, very good feedback from our students with regard to our courses and our material, etc. Let me just speak very briefly about the PASS CPA program. Modules generally do not provide a comprehensive technical review. So for example, even though Core 1 and Core 2, the exams are very technical, and the same thing is true for the electives, the purpose of the module is not really to provide a comprehensive technical review. PASS therefore provides extensive resources to supplement the modules, and by giving you a very intensive technical review specifically geared toward passing the exams, that gives you an edge in getting through these exams. At the end of the day, we've got study material as well as videos, and their sole purpose is to give you the knowledge you need to pass these exams, which I think is extremely helpful. Keep in mind, the purpose of the module isn't specifically to make you pass the exam. The purpose of the PASS material and videos is exactly that. Courses are available to cover both technical material, which is extremely important, as we just said. You also have the chance to write practice cases because, as you saw in the blueprint, there is case writing for both core and elective exams, with the case writing becoming more intensive as you move toward the electives. It's possible to take a course from an individual module, or you can take a package that includes all of the module exams. Study material and videos are available for either reviewing your technical or improving your case writing. And technical material includes concise summaries of technical material. Problem with some of the resources that I think you would get from CPA Canada is that they're so long. There's just so much to read. You can spend a lifetime, in my opinion, getting through. What we try to do at PASS is give you concise summaries of the technical material that are really doable to read. We also give you lots and lots of multiple choice questions and other types of objective format questions that can help you master the technical material. And the multiple choice questions are obviously very helpful practice for the actual module exams themselves. You can purchase in a course if you like, or you can just purchase resources. It's possible to purchase, for example, a study binder with or without a video package that covers either multiple competencies or individual competencies. So for example, if I'm only interested in tax, I can purchase a binder with or without videos specific for tax, or I can purchase a binder that covers all of the competencies, with all 6 competencies with or without videos. Practice cases are also available for module exams if you want further practice. And it gives students an opportunity to gain an edge by writing additional cases on top of cases that you do as part of the module. If you're interested in information on technical and case writing material available, you can feel free to go to the PASS website. I've given you the relevant links. Now, for those of you who don't go through PEP, who aren't going to do Core 1, Core 2, the electives, etc., we also have resources for you. We have technical resources for students in accredited or diploma programs, as many students who attend accredited programs don't feel adequately prepared for the CFE. And we talked about this earlier. Some accredited programs are great from a technical program, from a technical perspective. Other accredited programs, there could be holes. Maybe they weren't that strong in one area or another. So many students want to supplement their technical and make sure that there are no serious gaps. So we do provide technical resources for students in accredited program. And you can either buy a binder with material you can read for each of the competencies to review the technical, as well as videos. And another reason why people often find it helpful to get these technical material is that there's often, as we talked about earlier, a large gap between the time you finish your accredited program and you write your CFE. That would be another reason why you might be interested in technical material. When it comes to the CFE, I realize many of you are not thinking that far yet, but when it comes to the CFE, we offer case writing prep as well as technical prep. For case writing prep, our flagship course is our comprehensive course, which covers up all the bases of CFE case writing. We also have a shorter introductory case writing course, which is offered a number of months before the CFE for those who want to start early. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have technical prep. We've got live technical courses, a technical course for the financial accounting and management accounting competencies for the CFE. If you want to take a closer look at the courses offered for the CFE, I've given you the respective link. We try to be very flexible with our courses. The courses are offered live online for the CFE, but they're all videoed. So you can access the videos of the course literally 24/7. So if, for example, you miss a class, you can just go right to the video. Or if you want to review something we taught in the live class, you can go straight to the video. And we make a point of offering our live courses outside business hours, knowing that many people are working while they're taking our course. If you'd like to know anything more about the current CPA program or the new CPA program, or you'd like to know more about PASS, by all means, feel very free to contact myself, Michael Levy, or my partner, Ira Walfish. I've given you our respective emails, as well as our phone numbers, which are also our WhatsApp numbers. I really hope you found this presentation helpful.